All right. Welcome everybody to another episode of Boom, Bust and BS with Anthony Milewski and me, Christian Purefoy. And
Christian, where
what are we
you been,
doing?
man? We've been offline here for a month and a half.
That's great. Well, we're just trying to keep up with the news.
Well, we're bombing people. We're starting wars. We had a secret war in Venezuela that lasted a week or two. We had actually maybe a day or two, and now we're fighting in Iran. So it's been hectic in the commodities world, eh?
Yeah, exactly. Anything we say right now is just going to be out of date in as soon as Trump tweets something. So what are we
Well,
talking
look,
about today?
I think there's a couple of. I think the first thing to talk about is the war machine, war metals. I think that it's interesting all these developments that have been kind of unfolding now for a couple years around rare earths, and we'll call it minor metals because there's things like tungsten, and it just seems like this isn't going away. I can say like a cure for high prices is high prices, a cure for low prices is low prices, and uh, if you'd asked me 18 months ago, Anthony, what do you think is going to happen? I would have said, well, it's probably a round trip, but here we are, no stop, no sign of stopping in sight. These Chinese tariffs and what have you have not let off. They continue to control the supply, and it just keeps going. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, look at the price of tungsten. It's just gone up and up and up and up and up.
I mean, all of them, not just tungsten,
Yeah,
all
yeah,
of them
yeah,
did that. And
absolutely.
and you've had some corresponding, stories like USA Rare Earth. I mean, they've got a low grade thing in Texas. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. They've got some magnet factories. They recently announced a big merger with a Brazilian rare earth production, but they have a multi-billion-dollar market cap. So I think the market's responding by financing developers and producers, but it takes time.
Yeah, and time. I mean, I mean, the complexity that we're seeing unfold here, like obviously we're dealing with, as you said, the tariffs, but then there's the diesel issue that's coming up out of the Strait of Hormuz, and supply chains with shipping and freight. These companies and these financings are having to navigate just crazy waters right now.
Yeah, and I look at sulfuric acid. I mean, like a fundamental component of leaching and nickel mining and copper mining and a bunch of types of mining. So I don't know. I don't know what it means though. I think in the short term it means that there will be shortages. There will be mispriced commodities. Uh, it's different though than a supply demand imbalance where you are fundamentally short supply leaning into new demand, which we see. I think we see now with everything related to ammunition and night vision, and with the advances in drone technology, it seems like there's more likely to be more war, not less war, because it costs a lot. Go to Costco and pick up 50 drones and have a war. And so I think that these minor metals, these rare earths, are going to continue to be interesting. They're probably not all going to move together because they have different dynamics, they're processed differently, but I think that continues to be interesting in the foreseeable future.
And yeah, and I agree. I don't think they're going to move, certainly not at the same momentum, but there's going to be, I mean, if there was a single point of failure for mining and pricing, like sulfuric acid, diesel, and as you said, like the demand for national security just across, not just defense, but also data centers, which are being treated. I mean, if you look at the Mag 7, it's treated as a sort of national security thing in America. The demand for these, so it's the supply crisis plus the demand across all of these metals. I mean, tin, tantalum, so there's momentum definitely across all of them.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think that
And
segues into
actually, sorry,
speed.
Anthony, I mean, just to say, in your time, have you ever seen dynamics like this?
No, it's unprecedented. I mean, normally you have, okay, uranium is hot for this reason or copper is hot for that reason, but you have a bunch of really strong tailwinds across a bunch of metals. And we just talked about the war metals, but then you've got the AI metals or AI as it pertains to energy, another big theme going on. But I'll tell you one that's really caught my eye, and I think it's an idea that's been around, for decades, is undersea mining. Uh, and historically, I don't think the price of commodities was at a place where you could really justify mining this stuff. Forget, whatever your political views are or your environmental views. Like, it just didn't make sense financially, I don't think. Now we're sitting in a moment where geopolitics being what it is, commodity prices being what they are, it's become really interesting. And you've got TMC who, within the last month announced that they'd spent $250 million kind of paving the way for this industry. And now they've announced permitting updates and they're moving down the path. And I think you're going to see a boom. Like, TMC fine, they're the first movers. They probably have an advantage simply because of the money and the time they've spent, and they've really probably built the team and all that. But I think you're going to see 10 new entrants or 5 new entrants in this space, and it's probably going to be really interesting in the coming years. And setting TMC aside, there was another merger that happened, $1 billion merger. Tom Albanese, former Rio CEO, I think, is the chairman of the company. A little bit different. There's things to learn about deep sea mining. There are nodules, polymetallic nodules, which are high grade. There's, on the shelf, off the shelf. So there's all sorts of things to kind of explore with deep sea mining. But as a theme, as a realistic new entrant to the mining, actual mining, not prospecting kind of part of the cycle, I think we're here, and this is going to really be a narrative that's going now for some time.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we've been watching it play out, on the Oregon group, and there's been some tentative steps, and now you can really see the ball rolling. I mean, you've had Japan, I think it was Norway and America all making steps, very sort of, they're not making it very public because, as you said, there's some tension there over some of the politics, but they're all moving politically, but again, because of national security, right? These things are on their doorstep. They're just under the sea and they need to get
And
it.
also, I mean, like the U.S. exported pollution in the 80s. I mean, they fundamentally, globalization was an exercise, among other things, in exporting pollution, and we exported it to China. And if we're talking about our space in particular with the processing of minerals, um, you know, the Chinese were happy to accept that. And also just in general in the United States, the collapse of the copper mining industry, and really no real new mines being built of any note, that unfolded starting in the 80s until now. So now you've got a US government that's sort of sitting there saying, okay, what are we going to do? We can't rely on the Congo, child labor, can't rely on processing in China. By the way, a lot of the places where this stuff comes from are difficult at best. So deep sea mining, a new narrative, an idea whose age has come in terms of just the price of commodities, the technology. It's there, and it kind of fits in with this overall theme that we're talking about the war and everything else. It kind of fits in with it. So this is going to be really, I think, a transformative few years for that space, and that narrative is going to be carried, I think, through all of mining. I mean, ultimately, look at nickel. Take nickel. If in fact TMC is successful in their nickel mining adventure, if they are able to collect these polymer, and not just TMC, but there are at least 3 or 4 other that I'm aware of and have chatted with. I mean, that's going to impact the price of nickel, and what does that do to Indonesian production, and all these things don't play out next year. They play out over the next 10 years, but they're certainly relevant and going to become increasingly at the front of the conversations around mining.
Yeah, and the timeframes we deal in are 10 years, they are decades, right? And when you're looking at Indonesia, it controls what, 60-70% of the global nickel supply right now. And just to take one example, the diesel, the sulfuric acid problem, that could create a single point of failure in Indonesia. When you're America and you're looking at this stuff, and it's not just America, you're saying, hold on, we need other options here.
And this is kind of the bull case in general. It's like, it's not like oil and gas. Like onshore oil and gas, you can literally drill a well, have it flow, and be producing in a month. I mean, you can be producing so quickly in certain basins in certain situations. In mining, no, like you drill a hole in the ground and you make a discovery. Well, that's hole one. We're going to be drilling for the next 5 years, and the metallurgy and like it's such a slow process relative to the possibilities in oil and gas. And that's what the US government and really all Western governments got fundamentally wrong. Like, in a pinch with the straight, like production can be ramped up. You know, the heavy oil in Canada. There's a bunch of places oil can come from relatively quickly, offshore Africa, all these places. Whereas in the mining space, it's just not that way. And I think everyone got that wrong, partially because they didn't care, partially because they're incompetent. But here we are now, and it's really bullish for the sector, you know.
One we haven't talked about. How about uranium? What do you think's happening in that
But,
space?
yeah, I mean, like, which data reference point do you want around AI data centers? I mean, I think there's going to be riots in small towns in Eastern Oregon and Eastern Washington and the Midwest in America. Like, you're going to tell me that my energy bill is going to triple because, you know, people are counting ones and zeros on Claude. I think it's going to be absolutely infuriating to the average person if energy prices start going through the roof because of the demand at these data centers. So I don't know how you can really supply that demand without nuclear energy. I mean, coal, if you want to burn a hole in the atmosphere, whatever, or have acid rain, whatever happens when you have burned too much coal. I don't know, because you have to burn all of it. Whereas I think nuclear is really the only answer in this age of energy consumption for data centers. So, um, like
Well,
it's
the tech
it's
companies agree with you, right? I mean, they're
yeah,
restarting it, they're buying it up, they're getting into small modular reactors. They're pouring billions into it.
yeah. And like the funny thing about the market is it's so day to day. Like everything trades off of tweets now, but if you have any patience, like a lot of these things are going to unfold like in months and years, and they have that really big tailwind. And so there's a lot of interesting investment ideas, investment opportunities, especially have a little patience to like sit through a cycle.
All right, well, that's what we're here for. Anthony,
Look, yeah, and everyone, thanks for joining. We're back. It's been a busy kind of month and a half here, but I think we're back on the regular. So, Christian, great to chat, and we'll be back in a week or two.